So you don't have to go back and repeat. And we're Sunday forum, and we're entering a little bit late for the recording, but going through the helpful gifts. This is timely, but so help people understand and act upon issues of social importance, help others develop their leadership skills, have talents in the areas of music, arts, and writing, and be able to use technology and media, and be active in ecumenical relationships. So those were the helpful gifts. And so this weekend, thanks to Kathy, we submitted the ministry site profile to the ELCA. And now it's in the hands of our synod leadership. That will trigger a recommendation, and that's lined up already. And then our packet will be complete, and we will be ready to receive candidate names. And we'll enter what we refer to in the timeline as a waiting period. But it's also really a period of developing our candidate pool, candidate discernment, praying for our candidates, many of whom probably don't know that they're yet seeking a new position. And advertising, we're going to be doing some advertising and waiting on the synod to bring us some candidates, but also actively seeking candidates that are out there. We can receive candidates from any of our partner denominations with whom we are in communion. And Mandy, let me know if I'm getting this right, but we can receive candidates from the ELCA, from Episcopalians, Methodists, Church of Christ, Moravians, and
Presbyterian Reform.
Presbyterian, yes.
Excuse me, UCC, United Church of Christ.
United Church of Christ. Oh, thank you, George. So it's an exciting opportunity. They, of course, when they come to us, would need to commit to leading our, following our Lutheran liturgy and our traditions, but it does help expand the pool. We can also receive candidate nominations from you, from the congregation. And in our conversations with others who have been through this process across the country, one thing we have found is that often candidates do come from the congregation, and oftentimes the final candidate can come from the congregation. Somebody that you know, somebody who's in another state and part of our vast network of friends, and maybe they don't know yet that they're looking for some place to go, and planting that seed. And so we would urge people to plant the seed. After we do develop a candidate pool, and that would probably be between 3 and 5 candidates, we as a committee will then go into candidate interviews. And this is the point when I guess it's appropriate to mention that we would really ask for your help in understanding our needs for confidentiality. And I know how tempting it's going to be for us to be able to talk about it, but also for you to ask about it, and would just urge that we remind each other of that need for confidentiality. It helps protect us as a congregation, but also protect the candidates. After the candidate interviews and a selection of the final candidate, then we as a call committee will submit our candidate to the church council, that then will vote on the candidate to accept or decline she or him or her. And then the council will present the final candidate to the congregation for a vote. And we want to hear from you. So, yes.
Anywhere in that, toward the end of the process, does the congregation get to meet the candidate, hear him or her speak?
Yes. Yes, and Mandy, perhaps you can share with us your experiences.
So I guess I better get up because I have to deal with the owl. So before I even answer that question, I just want to say, this is an incredible committee. I mean, incredible. So Ann's saying that, you know, we're having meetings and we use hybrid methods. So she's chaired the meetings, and the last few she chaired from Norway. So while we were meeting here at 6:30 at night, here, it was 2:30 in the morning. And so if, in case you wonder if the committee is working hard, just talk to Ann. It's astounding to me that she was able to do that. Been to Norway, know what it's like to be in the land of the never setting sun. So,
And the Lutherans.
and lots of
Everywhere.
Lutherans,
Make a stick it at the Lutheran. Yeah.
So what's going to happen? So we'll get a candidate. The candidate will, as you heard, the call committee will recommend a candidate to the council. The council will do two things. One thing will be the council will adopt the compensation package. The second thing the council will do is, so that's going to be a negotiation. Second thing the council will do is recommend the candidate to you. And then the candidate will show up. And we'll have to plan a whole kind of process for this, but ultimately there'll be a worship service, which probably will mean that we have to have everybody here at one service from both campuses and from our friends in the ether world. And that person will preside at the liturgy, preach. You will get to ask questions, and then that person will be dismissed and you will vote. And when you vote, it's important that that candidate get a 2/3 vote. In fact, I'm going to say this because no one else will, and I have nothing to lose. It's important that you hear this and you take this seriously. If the candidate does not get a 2/3 vote and decides to accept the call anyway, rescind the call. Rescind it. Do not call anyone that the massive bulk of this congregation doesn't agree on. Because if you do that, you will have a split congregation up front. I've seen it happen. I was a synod secretary for a long time. And so you don't want that to happen to us. I don't want that to happen to us. And I'll take the guy outside or the woman outside and have a little conversation about what it means not to accept a call. So just remember that. So once that happens, that person is now the pastor, senior pastor elect of the congregation. And at some point in the future, that person will move here and that person will be installed, usually in this synod by the dean of the conference here, but it might be the bishop, who knows. And then I was installed in New York about 4 months after I started, which is not unusual. So by the time I was installed, I really was the pastor. So that's the process. Go ahead, Federico. And if I don't want to be the person doing this. So if you have a question, I'm going to give it to Ann maybe.
Well, maybe my question is, you are not suggesting when you say that we should have at least 75% of the vote. You're not suggesting
2/3, 66.6.
Okay. Okay, that's a bit, but still, you're not suggesting that people vote for a candidate that they are less than clean split.
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting that the candidate better pay attention to what the vote is.
Right.
A 50% vote is a formula for disaster.
Is there any chance that we will get to read a few of the sermons that this minister has written? And
The wonderful thing about the world we live in today is you can do more than just sermons. You can watch them. I mean, you don't have to go to St. Swithin's in the swamp, the middle of Michigan or something to go to that parish to see that. You'll be able to, online today, so you'll be able to hear them, see them, read what they say, and when they're here, ask questions.
But we don't know who they are.
Not yet, but you will. So what, that's a good point, actually. So there has to be 2 weeks, a full, from the day that the council says we're going to call a new pastor to the day you vote, has to be 2 full Sundays and the weeks in between. So then you'll get plenty of time in that period to do your research. All right, and then you'll meet the person. Go ahead, Chase.
And concerning the process, so what I understand is the call committee would recommend to the council, would then recommend to the congregation.
Yes.
Okay.
Just understand that things come to the congregation normally through the council. Whatever it is, comes through the council. Doesn't matter what the subject is. The council is the governing body between congregational meetings. Once the congregational meeting happens, the congregation is making all the decisions, not the council. The council members are just members of the congregation, but everything goes through the council. There's lots of stuff coming yet, so.
Beverly Palmer has a question.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with respect to the requirements, I must say I'm a little bit surprised that given our congregation's focus and priorities, that nurturing of the social issues and participation in social issues is only a would be nice requirement, whereas in the essentials, it seems that there's a kind of a little bit of an overlap, and two of them is, one is being able to work as a team and committee and group and stuff, and then also nurturing community. I mean, those kind of seem to be lumped into the same thing. So why is social issues just a would be nice? I mean,
I'm going to give you my answer and then you'll hear from the chair of the committee. My answer is that there is this form we have to fill out. And the form is one form fits all congregations. So St. Swithin's in the Swamp in the middle of Michigan and Christ the King and St. Peter's in New York get the same form. And you got to make choices. And so think of this document as bait on a hook. The real conversation is between the committee and the candidates. And that's where things like what you're raising can be done. This is not the end all and be all of everything we want to say about ourselves, but it's what they force us into. And it's worth saying that when this committee is done, the synod is going to get a list of all the things wrong with the form.
Yeah, and I would add, we too struggled with that. Boy, we struggled. We struggled for weeks and months. And we had a lot of movement around the form and the gifts. So the way we decided to address that is in the narrative when we're describing our congregation. And there we were also limited in word count, but we worked very hard in drawing from the strategic plan and all of our interest in social activism and what justice looks like to us, and incorporating that in the narrative form. My colleagues here, anybody else on the committee that would like to add anything? I see Terry's got her hand up. Terry?
Yeah, kind of building on what Ann's saying is that there was a strategy that went into filling out this form. So, we may have, how can they have in their head, there are 20 important things we want to get across in this form. There are these boxes we can fill in with word limits. There are these things we can check off. And we just want to strategically make sure that we have everything covered. So while, some important message may be very relevant for one question, the committee may have felt, well, we already covered that in this other question, this other box. So it was a strategic assembly of all the information into this, as Mandy said, this very, restrictive document in some ways.
Nathan?
Yeah, just the other thing is, as we built this, right, and we did poll a lot of people and work with them, and we knew nothing was gonna be perfect, right? We weren't gonna nail it. But we also thought a lot about, what the senior pastor specifically had to bring versus what he could bring out of the congregation, he or she, right? So the leadership, not being a micromanager, developing leaders came through very strongly from the staff, but from other groups as well. So just like, the social justice, we have a pastor for the community, right? Just like on the music, right? We want a pastor who's very engaged in the music ministry, but we have a fantastic music ministry. We don't need the new senior pastor to develop that music ministry. So there were a few things that we thought about that move things to the nice to have. But again, we know nothing's going to be perfect. Social issues are clearly prevalent throughout the MSP, right? So we felt like that was covered very well, and obviously we'll make that clear in the interviews.
I hope that answered your question. And if not, let's follow up afterwards. Yes,
Is this document posted somewhere where we could see it?
I'll email it to you. So if you just reach out to me or email me at call@ctkelc.org. I get those emails. That's the call committee email inbox, and I'll be happy to email it to you.
Once it's posted.
Once it's posted, yes, thank you. Once it's posted and it's gone to the rest of the world. So
I was gonna say, I don't know whether this is confidential. Probably not in the sense of when you have a name, but at this point, or what can be shared, is there a way that the 5 and the 5 and whatever of the narrative, perhaps not the whole thing, could be shared with the congregation as a email, as a something, or so that you don't have to receive however many requests for it. Well, I was thinking of people in this room. But it could be shared with perhaps people who are not able to be here today, or for whatever reason, would not have that information. That's very important information,
sure.
I think, for, not that I think it's important for us to know.
Yeah. So I think maybe considering posting it on our webpage might be a good alternative and option. One of the good things we have learned about this process is the constraints and that the church council and that the administrative team has on sending stuff out, right? So, and primary on that is that they don't, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but they really don't want to indulge the congregation with multiple emails a week. And so that's why we're probably not going to email it to the congregation. We were thrilled to be able to email a letter to the congregation about the call committee and about this Sunday forum. And we're thrilled to be able to include it in the Sunday bulletin and other things. But for now, feel free to email me and I'll send it to you. Really, it's not a burden, and we'll consider putting it on the call page.
Simply put it in the family.
It's huge.
Too long.
No, you're waiting too long.
Terry,
I mean, is it
10 points? I mean, that's this much.
Yeah,
This is 14 pages.
14 pages.
So is there,
It is the
once,
banner.
once the job is posted, is there nothing, there's nothing keeping us from posting on the company website, or is that not?
You can post it, and Claudia's right. You need to know
Yeah.
what's there.
Yeah,
That's
so we'll
true.
post it, but
But
it's-
here's the other thing that's true, and again, I have nothing to lose, so I'm gonna say this to all of you. This is a congregation full of editors who are never satisfied. So here's the deal, and you will not be satisfied with this document. We're not 100%
We're not
satisfied.
either.
Please, if you get it, and don't complain, I said something else. Don't complain that something's missing it.
Yeah.
Because remember, it's a minnow on a hook to catch a whale. It's not the definitive, this is Christ the King, this is what we want. Everything is exactly as it can't be, it's impossible. Even if we had the freedom to do what we would like to do, we can't do it. So I gotta say that to you. I've been through enough of this now to know that this is the most editing congregation I've ever served. And I've served in this whole synod. And so when you get it, thank God that it's done. And then don't,
Hands off.
you could talk about it, but don't complain about it. There's too much work for this committee. I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
Good job.
Just to the point of sending it out as a letter, putting it in the banner, putting it on the MailChimp, whatever. I'm an usher this morning. One of our regular members comes up to me and he said, I came in the middle of June and there was no 8:30 service. And then last week I came up here and there it was. You're not telling me these things.
Oh.
There's not been enough information about that. And I said, well, have you read the banner? No. Well, did you read the MailChimp? No. What else can we do?
Yeah.
You know, so if we sent it out or we did this or did that, the people that want it, all of a sudden they can't find it. But if you really want it, she'll send you a copy. And that means that you have to take the step to email her. How many of us, me included, will walk out of here and not think about it until maybe next Saturday night? Okay, been there, done that. So just email her. She'll be happy to send you one.
Thank you, Jill. Bill.
What all this discussion shows to me
You
is
go
an
first.
issue with transparency. There is a lack of history of transparency, and you're seeing the consequences of it. And so that is not good to start out with a process like this.
So let me answer that. Let me respond. You are right. So what does transparency mean in a congregation like this? It doesn't mean you get to see everything or decide on everything. You understand, you agree with that, right? So what it does mean is that what can be shared is shared through a number of ways. We have all these, probably too many sources of information. You know, the call committees is, you can go to what's called QR code that's on the back of the bulletin every Sunday. Lots of ways to get at information. The other way decisions are made, and this is a definition of transparency in the Christian church, at least in the Lutheran church, is that we're fast appointing committees. And committees mean, when a committee is put in place, it means the council and you trust that committee. And that committee, members of those committees can share with you anything they want to share with you. There's no limits, but you have to ask sometimes. And then the council acts. I don't know if they're up to date, maybe you know, the minutes and all that you haven't seen are up in the, by the elevators.
Covers almost half the bulletin board.
Everything from the last council, you will hear everything. You will. But now again, another little speech. Yes, there's history. History, did you listen last Sunday's sermon? Once. Don't look back, look up. So you're right, I'm not disagreeing with you, but forget that history. From now on, we're moving that way, not that way. So we'll do the best we can. Beverly works hard on this, the rest of the staff works hard on this, the council works hard on this. The call committee will be as open as they can possibly be. They will post this and you can ask for it to be said, but put aside the old ways because we're not there anymore. I am a firm believer, maybe you haven't noticed this by now, that anything you want to ask. If we can't answer, we're going to tell you, can't answer that question. But if we can answer it, we're going to tell you, all of us, everyone, the call committee, the staff, the council, all of us, nothing to hide here. Okay?
Yeah, Kathy.
As a committee, we're very aware of this and spend a lot of time talking about how to communicate and share information. And in our meetings, after Anne opens the meeting and devotion, the next item of business is talking about feedback from the congregation and what we've heard from people. So transparency is a two-way dance. It's, it's not just us. So we're busy thinking about what can we share, but we want to hear from you, which is why we're here this morning and headed out to Memorial soon after. Why we wear name tags, because we want people to talk to.
And we'd like your ideas, everyone's ideas, now or after the forum of how you want to hear from us. Is what we're doing right now, we're meeting on the third Sunday of every month, except for Advent. Probably not during Lent, but we'll wait for those directives, but to provide updates as we can. We've got a website. We put information in the bulletin and in the banner. So, are there other ways that we could be doing it better and differently, that everyone hears things in a different way? And so keep us posted on whether we're doing a good job or how we could improve.
There's even an old school, drop your comment in, write a
Yeah.
little note in the narthex, actually at both sides.
No one's dropped a
And
thing
nobody's
in.
dropped anything.
Doggone
in.
it.
I bet you haven't seen it. Oops, wait, well, I might have moved it from yesterday. Well, we had a memorial service, okay. But there's an old school box there that says, drop your little
And there's a
comment
little
in.
pin and there's a
There's
little
a
piece of
it's just-
paper.
Yeah, so.
And we also have a mailbox upstairs on the third floor. If you're up providing Mandy with feedback, swing by and slide something in our mailbox as well. And then there's also the email address and this and our webpage, where you can also drop suggestions, both with your name attributed or anonymously. So, Federico.
Just a comment, the QR code on this page is not working. And the reason is it was reduced too much. And if you pay attention, the image is upside down.
Yeah.
So it will not.
Okay, well,
It did?
Yeah, it's opening it right.
Oh, on the,
Yeah.
It's
the one
not-
we sent down, it's this one.
It's not
Oh,
working.
it is, oh, cool, oh, oh.
Well, check.
so another way
It
is to,
didn't work for me.
yeah, okay, I'm sorry it didn't work for
Sorry,
you,
sorry.
Federico. Another way is to type the words search committee or call committee in the search function.
Just go to the homepage, put it in the search, and it goes up immediately there. So it's
Or
easy
email
to
me.
find.
So, well, I'm going to start with Tor.
I think it's important as a congregation, that we really trust the process and trust the committee. The council is the elected representatives of the congregation, and we have to trust the council. The council took a very seriously putting this committee together. There was a lot of debate on council to try to get a very strong committee put together with a broad cross-section of the congregation. I think the communication from the call committee has been outstanding. I think the fact that they were able to pull this thing together in just a month or two, and as Pastor Mandy said, it's not a perfect document. Nobody is 100% satisfied with this document, but there needs to be, I think we just need to let the process work. It's a good process. It is an outstanding committee, and they've been very open to receiving feedback, receiving communication and communicating with the congregation. If we just kind of trust that the process will work, I have every confidence that we are going to find an outstanding pastor by the middle of next year. Outstanding.
Thank you, Tor. Bill, thank you for your patience.
Very simple question. If you have a nomination / suggestion, do you just need a name and how to find them, or do you need a nomination that explains their gifts, or what do you want?
Great question. Thank you for asking it. I need you to email me or email the committee at call@ctkelc.org and say, I have the name of somebody. I will send you the form. It's prescribed by the Synod, and it's a one-page form that contains all of the information. we would ask if you have the name of somebody that you contact that person also and say, hey, we've got an opening. I'd like to submit your name so that she or he knows you're doing that. That form then will be approved by our committee or acknowledged by our committee. Our committee has committed to sending all forms that we receive on to the Synod. The Synod then, and the leadership there will then enter it in and do a number of things. There are kinds of outreach and background checks and other internal review of it. But that's a great way to receive candidates, and we look forward to receiving a lot. We hope that you'll let us know. Please, of course.
If you get the same name from several people, do you think that would influence the process?
That's an interesting question. I think we probably have to consider it as a group, whether or not that would influence us.
I mean, I'm not.
I don't, my instinct is, and my impulse is that this is not a necessarily a function of who gets more votes in the nomination pool acclamation process. We're going to take this very seriously and evaluate each individual in a very serious manner. Yeah.
Forgive me if this has already been answered, but I know at one point there was the discussion, or we were told, I think I'm reminding of like Pastor Dwayne, is that the model now is a tenure of 5 to 7 years. I don't know if that is still the expectation or that was just a one time, I don't know, but I just remember that when Pastor Dwayne came, there was the discussion of the overall at the national level expectation was that a senior pastor doesn't stay for 30 years or whatever. It's not these long durations, that it was shorter. So I was just curious about what that expectation, or if I'm just remembering.
Yeah, and I can't remember if the form was the same back then as it is now. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, if there hasn't been any change to it. But on the form, we are required to check a box, 0 to 3 years, 3 to 5, etc. That's not what you're asking? Okay.
How long will the pastor be?
How long will they serve?
Oh, how long will they serve? Is that your question?
Yes, thank you. So it was just that, I just recall that.
Yeah, we have been an extraordinarily lucky congregation that we had Pastor Peterman for 30 years and we had Robert Moore for 25 years. That really doesn't happen in most churches. And what the pattern is, it's not that we're saying you can only serve 5 to 7 years. What the pattern that the church body is seeing, that pastors stay somewhere between 5 and 7
I
years.
interpreted it as that the observation was it's not healthy to have a senior pastor for 30 years because, I don't know. But anyway, if that the tenure is
If that's
healthier,
not
to
on the
have a
form.
little more-
Yeah, it is, I'm sure that there is some psychological and workplace and all that kind of stuff that talks about that. But the way that the world has changed, most people don't stay in a job more than 5 to 7 years.
I interpreted it differently as kind of a recommendation kind of thing, like to keep, and I'm like, oh my God, this process is so difficult and long, like I can't imagine like, okay, every 5 to 7
I
years.
know.
Okay.
We share your
Yeah,
opinion.
We're like, after this, it will be 30 years.
And somewhat as an aside, we do want someone with longevity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could serve for many years.
Okay.
Again, it may not happen that way, right? But
So you don't want a 70-year-old.
I wasn't looking at you.
But it's the truth.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on Nathan, the form has checked a range of years of experience of what we're looking for. So we checked all of them except the 0 to 3 years.
Thank you. You want to add, Victoria? Any other questions or comments? Anybody from the Zoom?
Yeah, anybody else? Great question, Beverly, earlier. Anyone there? I mean, they're there, but no.
Hey, Kathy.
So, in the conversation about transparency, keep in mind, we're going into a stage where we won't be able to share a whole lot because we will be doing Zoom interviews and then in-person interviews, and we can't talk about candidates. So it's a time when, as Ann said, we're going to be advertising, maybe even in Christian Century, so you might see a little blurb about CTK. But it's a time that it will be great to hear from you if you have suggestions, because we aren't going to be able to start talking to you about candidates.
It might be helpful to understand why. So if you're a pastor in, again, I'll use my favorite congregation, St. Swithin's in the Swamp, and you're a candidate to become the senior pastor at Christ the King Church, the last thing you want to happen is your congregation to know you're looking for a call. So that the confidentiality is to protect the candidates. So that's why you can't be shared, because everybody knows everybody in the ELCA. Sooner or later, it's a very small church, really. And when that kind of information gets out, it makes life difficult for the candidate in the congregation he or she is currently serving. That's the confidentiality reason, and nothing else than that.
Has the committee already received names anonymously around the country, or?
No, but we've received the same kinds of questions as Bill's of, I've got, you know, in the form of, I've got somebody really great in mind. I know somebody who'd be super. Can you reach out to them? And the answer is, well, no, we don't reach out to them, but you can, since you know them. So, and let them know about the call and check their interest and see if you can submit their name to us. So we have not yet received. We hope to very soon as this thing is published. Mandy.
So there's another form you don't know about, but I might as well tell you about this one. So as inadequate as the MSP is, the pastors have to fill out a form too, called our roster ministers profile, an RMP. Everybody's got acronyms or whatever. So that has some of the same questions. The only way we get a candidate here is if the candidate, whoever it is, wherever the source is, sends an RMP to the synod office, this synod office. So it's form, and then the job of the bishop is bishop's office is to try to match the forms. And again, remember the inadequacies of both. So somebody else has to fill out a form. So I will tell you I never did. So anyway.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
Does a pastor have to ask his bishop to sign the RFP before it goes into?
You mean if the pastor's in Michigan and
Yes.
at that bishop? Usually, yes.
Or
But that's not an issue.
or the bishop of this synod contacts the bishop of that synod and says, we've received this name as a prospect. May we have your permission to contact that person?
Like a
And a
football
bishop can say yes or no.
That sounds so Catholic to me.
Well, let me give you an answer. Why? Why would you want the bishop to do that? Because we're not all perfect. And some of us are much less than perfect. And who knows that? The bishop. The bishop knows if there's a problem pastor. And that you can define that any way you want, because it is defined any way you want. And so the bishop would say, you know, I wouldn't put her or him on that list because this is a problem. You know, you just got to know that. That's why the bishop does it. It's not Catholic in the sense it's protected. It's an attempt at least to protect the congregation. Doesn't always work.
And along those lines, we will also do a background check.
Oh, yes.
We, as a call committee, have committed to do that. That is not paid for. It's suggested by the synod, but it's not paid for by them. And we will conduct a robust background check and check all of their references.
But you said if we submit a name, then we fill out a form that you submit it to the Senate. So if that person is in our Senate, would the Senate office send that form they have to fill out to them?
We all get it all the time, and it's just a matter of filling it out. I mean, it's on everybody else's website, so. If you're looking for a call, you're supposed to fill it out.
Well, but if we want
They-
to,
right.
somebody, they may not just automatically.
Well, they won't automatically do it, but if they're contacted by the Senate,
Yeah.
they will. The Senate won't take anything without that thing.
And that's also why we suggest you reach out
Right.
to that person
Right.
and encourage them and say, hey, you would need to fill out this form.
I was an interim minister from 1996 to 2011, and one more time in 2014. I was also on the Board of Regents at Texas Lutheran and on the Board of Trustees at Fort Bragg Seminary. It was amazing in all three of those elements, how many times one person's name keeps showing up. Not in all three categories, but in each category, people thought they were the best one for that job. Or one bishop told me they're running. They're trying to get out. They're in big trouble. They're trying to get out, and they're going to try to seduce you to rescue them from their problem. Oh, is that how it works? Yeah, but we have a system that will protect congregations from people who voluntarily submit their name to the congregation.
So,
No matter where you go, there you are.
can I ask one more question? Can it go the other way, a bishop and handcuff a superstar?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen that.
I could be really.
You know, our bishops are pastors first. And so they really are concerned about congregations a lot. And so I haven't seen anybody say you can't move. I mean, I was the secretary of the New Jersey Synod, and I got a call into New York. The bishop was not happy, but he didn't get in the way. So that's just what happens. It's gonna be okay, folks. I know you're anxious. It's gonna be just fine.
I think what you're saying is trust the process.
Just the process. Trust the spirit. The process is the process. The
Yeah.
spirit will choose the pastor.
One more time, circling back around to transparency. You may feel, if you were part of the process when we called Pastor Dwayne, we had, every little group and committee had meetings with somebody from the call committee, and there were lots of questions and we answered, and then they summarized everything. You didn't see that so much this time because what had we just finished? The strategic plan. We had had all kinds of meetings and all kinds of interviews and all kinds of surveys. And so we as a committee said, we don't need to burden people with more meetings because we know what the thoughts are. Daniel gave us the data. We have the data. Now, there were certain things, the staff, the young families,
Youth
the
choir,
the choirs at their retreat,
the youth.
and the youth, those were interviewed. They met and were interviewed and were asked questions about what they wanted to see. And a lot of that was combined into the narrative of the MSP. So you may be thinking, well, I wasn't part of this process. Well, if you were part of the strategic plan, you were part of this process because we really dug into that and we used it in the narrative.
We've got some amazing members of our committee in Victoria and Emily, and they did robust work in interviewing the youth, and I thought maybe you could just share with us your process and what you heard.
Yeah, so we met with the youth and there weren't, so we had 2 separate meetings with the youth, and we really just talked through the whole list of gifts that we could have written down on the ministry site profile. And we discussed all of them with the youth, and they sort of gave us their thoughts on what they thought would be the best. And then we combined it with, we worked with Andrea and Nathan and Quentin to combine it with what everyone else wanted, like the young families, the staff, and the choir. And that's how we came up with the gifts. But I'd say that they were really focused on having someone who would focus on all different groups in the congregation. So the youth, the young families, they would make sure to spread their focus on to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah. We're thrilled to have Emily and Victoria on the committee and informing us. And the thing that came out in the MSP, which you all will see, it has a section on energy. Describe what we're excited about. And that section is taken up with descriptions about the youth program and the active participation of the youth in every aspect of our liturgy and in our church life. And they are very well represented in Emily and Victoria. So, well, I know we're coming up on our hour. I'll check one more time for the Zoom if there are anybody that wants to add anything to the, or ask questions. But we are really, we are so optimistically joyful about what God has for us. And we have such a wonderful product here in Christ the King, both in our facilities at both campuses as well as in the congregation. And we are awaiting in joyful anticipation who the next person God has for us. So I hope you share in that enthusiasm, and hope you'll join us again at the next Sunday Forum, the third Sunday in October. And Mandy, if I may, could I ask you to help lead us in the way we close our call committee meetings?
Sure. We use the, learned how to do this at Christ the King. We use the Lord's Prayer, or we'll use the one we pray at 8:30. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, everybody.